Doing the double. It's been a huge conversation this past 2 years with Kyle Larson attempting to do just that and race both IndyCar's Indianapolis 500 and NASCAR's Coke 600 at Charlotte on the same day. Both these races have become a Memorial Day long weekend tradition. The Indy 500, which is one of, if not the most recognizable and prestigious races in the world, and the Coke 600, a NASCAR crown jewel event and NASCAR's longest race on the calendar. Completing 1,100 miles of racing on a single day is one of the most mentally and physically demanding challenges a driver can face. It's only possible to do this due to IndyCar's Indy 500 in the early afternoon and NASCAR's start time being in the evening on Sunday night. 5 drivers have attempted to do the double, so let's deep dive into the history of attempting double duties, starting with the driver everyone is talking about and the guy who's about to make his second attempt at doing the double, Kyle Larson. Larson attempted his first double in 2024, driving for McLaren in a collaboration with Hendrick Motorsports. He got his first laps in an IndyCar at the Indy 500 rookie orientation in October 2023. He would return to the seat of an IndyCar at Phoenix in February 2024, and when the Indy 500 Open test came around in April of 2024, Larson put up the second fastest time on day one at 226.384 miles per hour, behind the defending winner of the Indianapolis 500, Team Penske's Joseph Newgarden. Qualifying for the big race can be very stressful, as we've seen some big names get bumped out of the race in the past. However, Larson had no worries as he would post the 6th fastest time at 232.563 miles per hour, locking himself in the top 12. This gave Larson a shot to grab pole position on the following day. Larson would once again impress on Sunday, locking himself into the Fast 6 and ultimately settling for a 5th place starting spot with an average speed of 232.788 miles an hour. Larson was the only rookie to make it into the Fast 6. Everything was looking great for Kyle Larson going into race day, but unfortunately, Mother Nature had other plans. I got to attend the 2024 Indianapolis 500. It was my first time at the race. The day started off great and the weather was nice. However, thunderstorms rolled in just before the scheduled start time, and that put a huge delay to the start. The last time the Indy 500 was impacted by rain was 2007. Just my luck. This put a lot of questions in the air about Kyle Larson and whether he was going to stay and compete in the Indy 500 or opt to leave and head to Charlotte for the Coke 600. After careful consideration, Kyle Larson and Hendrick Motorsports opted to stay in Indianapolis and run the 500, while NASCAR Xfinity Series regular Justin Allgaier would fill in and start the 600 over in Charlotte. This would be a controversial decision and one that ultimately would end up costing Kyle Larson the regular season championship and an additional 5 playoff bonus points. In case you were curious, Larson missed the Final Four by 7 points, so this decision did not cost him a shot at a championship without going into the what-ifs of the Coke 600. The Indianapolis 500 would start at 4:44 p.m., making it the latest start time in the 108-year history of the race. The Indianapolis Motor Speedway does not have lights, but with sunset scheduled at 9:03 p.m., IndyCar officials decided there was sufficient time to get the race in as long as it ended by 8:15 p.m. local time, which is exactly when the checkered flag would fall. When the race finally began, Larson would fall back out of the top 10 in the early stages. However, as the race progressed, Kyle would start to claw his way forward and back into the top 10. He was also proving to be a contender for the win. Larson would get as high as 6th place as the race approached its final stages. Things would unravel a little bit though when Kyle had to complete a drive-through penalty on lap 132 for speeding on pit road during a green flag pit stop. This would ruin Larson's chances at a solid finish, as it proves to be very difficult to recover from a penalty this late in the running. He would end up crossing the line in 18th. More importantly, he completed all 200 laps and 500 miles in his first attempt at the 500, and he would pick up 2024 Indianapolis 500 Rookie of the Year honors. With the race completed, Kyle Larson and his team would immediately head over to Charlotte Motor Speedway so he could complete what was left of the Coke 600. Unfortunately for Kyle though, Mother Nature put a dampening on festivities over there as well. When Kyle arrived in Charlotte, the race was under a rain delay after 249 laps. Justin Allgaier was running a respectable 13th place and on the lead lap at the time of the stoppage. Kyle would not get to complete a single lap though, as with the race being past halfway and official, NASCAR decided to call the race due to the weather conditions not improving. In the aftermath of this, it took a while for NASCAR to grant Larson a playoff waiver for missing the Coke 600, but they would eventually do so, as it would look very poor on NASCAR not giving him one, seeing the amount of exposure and hype it gave both series. And not to mention, he was the current NASCAR Cup Series points leader going into the Coke 600. NASCAR did make the rules more clear-cut after this though, as NASCAR will not grant a playoff waiver unless it's due to a medical issue such as injury, the birth of a child, or a family emergency. This means technically Kyle Larson has not completed the double, but he will attempt to do so again in 2025. Even Amazon is fully invested in his attempt, as they will be producing a documentary following Kyle's journey. But if rain becomes a factor this year, Kyle will have no choice but to go to Charlotte or forfeit his hopes of another NASCAR championship. At the time of recording this, Kyle has completed the Indy 500 refresher, but on day 2 of open testing, he would make contact with the wall in turn 1, bringing an end to his day. Personally, I think this might be good for Kyle, as he now has found the limit, and I think he will be competitive once again in this year's Indy 500. Now, let's go back to the origins of the double. From the early 1960s to the 1980s, the Indy 500 had some NASCAR crossover. Both races did not run on the same day until 1974. NASCAR legends Bobby Allison and Cale Yarborough were among some of the drivers who have attempted the Indy 500. However, none did the double, and at times even elected to skip Charlotte in favor of racing the Indy 500. In 1992, Musco Lighting Company installed lights at the Charlotte Motor Speedway from the 1992 Winston. This made Charlotte Motor Speedway the first speedway of its kind to allow for night racing. I actually did a video about that race. In 1993, NASCAR pushed the start time of the 600 back to 4:30 p.m., getting rid of the overlap with the Indy 500. With the shift in start time, the thought of running both races popped into some people's heads, and in 1994, John Andredy would do just that. John Andredy, who was a veteran of the IndyCar series, made the transition to the NASCAR Cup Series full-time in 1994, but still had the desire to race the Indy 500. Andredy would successfully qualify for both races and become the first ever driver to do the double. Andredy made a very detailed, strict itinerary so he could successfully complete the double, as the window for traveling between the two racetracks was very tight. He would start 10th in the Indy 500, but he would be 4 laps down to winner Al Unser Jr. at the conclusion. At the end of the 500, Andredy would jump on a helicopter to the airport and make it to Charlotte with just enough time to start the Coca-Cola 600. Andredy missed the mandatory pre-race drivers meeting, forcing him to start at the tail end of the field. Unfortunately for Andredy, he would have an engine failure and drop out of the race on lap 220, resulting in a 36th place finish. Although he did not complete all the laps, he was the first ever to do the double and inspired others to do the same. The following year in 1995, IndyCar veteran Davy Jones attempted to do the double. He did qualify for the 500, but failed to qualify for the Coke 600. The next driver to attempt the double would be Robbie Gordon in 1997. Like John Andretti in 1994, Robbie Gordon, who was another IndyCar veteran, would make the transition to full-time NASCAR Cup Series racing with Sabco Racing and Felix Sabates. The team would field Robbie's Indy 500 efforts in a highly funded operation with a lot of attention and hype surrounding it. Mother Nature would have other plans though, as the Indy 500 that day would be rained out. This eliminated the opportunity of completing the double, but Robbie Gordon would still compete in both races. Sunday night's running of the Coke 600 would also be affected by rain and would be called after 333 laps, giving Jeff Gordon the victory. Robbie Gordon would end up finishing 41st after wrecking out on lap 186. Gordon would fly back to Indy on Monday, where the race would only complete 15 laps before rain would push the remainder to Tuesday. Gordon would unfortunately drop out early due to a fire after only completing 19 laps. Robbie Gordon's second attempt at the double would also be ruined by Mother Nature in the year 2000. He qualified for both races once again, but needed a provisional for the Coke 600, this time with Team Menard, who fielded both entries in both races. The start time of the Indy 500 was pushed back 3 hours due to rain. Robbie stayed in Indianapolis to run the 500, while PJ Jones would be over in Charlotte to start the car he was supposed to run in the Coke 600. Robbie Gordon would end up finishing 6th and on the lead lap, completing all 500 miles. Gordon immediately flew to Charlotte. At the Indy 500's conclusion, a brief rain shower halted the race on lap 254. This allowed Gordon to take over the car from PJ Jones to finish the race. Gordon finished 35th, 11 laps down. However, PJ Jones got the credit and points for the result due to him starting the race. Maybe the third time will be the charm for Robbie Gordon, and in 2002 he would do just that. For the first time, rain did not interfere with his plans of running the double. He would once again race for Team Menard with some support from Richard Childress Racing that he now drives for in the NASCAR Cup Series. He would start the 500 in 11th and end up finishing in 8th spot, completing all 200 laps in 500 miles. Gordon was scheduled to roll off 12th for the Coke 600, but have to start from the back of the pack due to missing the mandatory pre-race drivers meeting. Robbie worked his way up through the field and even made it to the top 5 at one point. However, late race handling problems and leg cramps relegated him to a 16th place finish 1 lap down. Unfortunately, he was only 1.5 miles short of completing all 1100. For the first time, Robbie Gordon would attempt the double in consecutive years in 2003. This would be his 4th effort overall at trying to complete the double. This time, the Indy 500 efforts would be with Andredy Green Racing and his Cup effort with RCR once again. He qualified 3rd and on the front row for the 500. However, he ended up dropping out of the race after completing 169 laps due to a gearbox failure, finishing 22nd. This left him with much more time to get to Charlotte, where he would get a police escort to the airport. He would start the Coke 600, but like his first 2 attempts, Mother Nature showed her hand. The race would be declared official after 276 laps, declaring Jimmy Johnson the winner. Robbie would finish in the 17th spot, 1 lap down. In 2004, and the 3rd consecutive year, we would see Robbie Gordon attempt the double for his 5th and final time. Trying to do this 5 times is a feat that I'm not sure will be surpassed. This time, he would bring his own team to Indianapolis, where he would qualify 18th. Robbie Gordon might be one of the unluckiest drivers ever, because for the 4th time in 5 attempts, Mother Nature would rain on his parade. The start of the Indy 500 was pushed back by 2 hours. Robbie stayed in Indy to start the race. However, rain would halt the action on lap 27. Gordon anticipated the rest of the day to be a washout, so he departed Indy for Charlotte. But that would be not the case, and the race would resume after another 2-hour delay. Jacques Lazier was standing by for Robbie Gordon and restarted the 500 for him. However, the car would break an axle after 88 laps, retiring Lazier from the race. In Charlotte, the Coke 600 would go the full distance. Robbie Gordon would wheel his RCR Chevy to a 20th place finish, 3 laps down. 10 years later, and the most recent driver to do it before Kyle Larson was Kurt Busch in 2014. Busch tested for Andredy at Indianapolis during the 2013 season. Busch topped the speed charts during his rookie orientation and showed race-winning speed during practice leading up to the big race. On the first day of qualifying, Busch made 2 qualifying attempts and posted the 10th fastest time, just missing the Fast 9 shootout. Right after his second attempt, he boarded a helicopter so he could fly to Charlotte for the Sprint All-Star race. Busch then headed back to Indy the following day for the second day of qualifying, where he would settle for a 12th place starting spot in the Indy 500. Come race day, Busch would fall back to as low as 20th, but would fight his way to a very strong and respectable 6th place finish, and he would complete all 500 miles. What made this even more impressive was 20 of the 33 starters finished the race on the lead lap. Busch earned the race's Rookie of the Year honors, and after the race, Busch would make it to Charlotte with time to spare. In his first year with Stewart Racing, he qualified 28th. However, despite his on-time arrival, it wasn't early enough to make the mandatory pre-race drivers meeting, pushing him to start shotgun on the field. He would make it up to the top 15, but would end up retiring due to an engine failure after completing 271 laps. Busch would end up completing just over 900 miles of the scheduled 1100. And now, and arguably the most high-profile driver to attempt the double, well, that would be Tony Stewart in 1999. Stewart joined the NASCAR Cup Series with Joe Gibbs Racing after spending the last 3 years in the IRL and winning the 1997 Series championship. Stewart made his Indy 500 attempt with TriStar Motorsports. On qualifying day in Indy, Stewart had to make a qualifying attempt for the 500 before immediately flying to Charlotte to compete in the NASCAR Winston Open for NASCAR's All-Star race. Tony would qualify 24th for the 500. However, he would have better fortunes that night over in Charlotte, leading 49 of the 50 laps, winning the Winston Open, and locking himself in the All-Star race. Tony would start dead last in 21st place, but would drive his way through the field, leading 5 laps and finishing second to Hendrick Motorsports' Terry Labonte. When it came to race day in the 500, Tony was not much of a factor on race day. He did finish a respectable 9th place, but was 4 laps down to winner Kenny Bragg. His efforts in the Coke 600 would be much more successful as he would come deep in the field to finish 4th. He completed all 600 miles and led 13 laps throughout the night. Tony Stewart would make his second attempt in 2001. This would be the most successful attempt by any driver. This time though, the Indy 500 efforts would be fielded by IndyCar powerhouse Chip Ganassi Racing. Tony was a factor for the race win all day, to no one's surprise being with Ganassi. Stewart led 13 laps during the race and would end up finishing 6th behind his 2 Chip Ganassi Racing teammates, Jimmy Vasser and Bruno Junqueira. When he crossed the line, he would be the final car on the lead lap that would successfully complete all 500 miles. Over in Charlotte, Stewart qualified 12th, but like many others before him, missed the pre-race mandatory drivers meeting, resulting him to start in the back of the field. The night did not get off to a good start as Stewart would spin on lap 2. However, Stewart would claw his way back through the field throughout the night and would finish 3rd in the 600. He would become the first and currently only driver to successfully complete all 1100 miles of the double, proving just how many factors can make it extremely difficult to complete all 1100 miles. In 2004, Tony Stewart almost made a last-minute effort to do the double with AJ Foyt Racing. He had a suit on and looked like he was going to go out there for practice. Stewart waited for permission from his sponsor so he could drive the car, but a deal could not be done. That's going to wrap this one up. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you're looking for more IndyCar, NASCAR, and motorsports history videos, make sure you hit that subscribe button and just hit that thumbs up to let me know you enjoyed it. That's all for now. Take care, everyone. I hope to see you in the next one.